Waverly Hills Sanatorium is a real place in Louisville, Kentucky. From a distance, it looks like a fortress on the hill. 5 stories of brick, rows of windows, long, empty corridors, and a shape that feels too large to be forgotten. But Waverly Hills was not built to scare people. It was built because people were already scared. In the early 1900s, tuberculosis was one of the most feared diseases in America. People called it the White Plague. It spread quietly. It took time, and for many families, it changed everything. Before modern antibiotics, treatment was limited. Doctors believed fresh air, sunlight, rest, and isolation gave patients the best chance. That is why sanatoriums were built. They were part hospital, part quarantine, part last hope. And Waverly Hills became one of the most famous of them. This is the Location Files. Episode 7, Waverly Hills Sanatorium. The first version of Waverly Hills opened in 1910. It was much smaller than the building people recognize today. But tuberculosis did not stay small. More people needed care. The wooden buildings were not enough. So a permanent structure was planned. In 1926, the 5-story Waverly Hills building opened. It was built to hold hundreds of patients. Long wings, large windows designed to let in air, open-air porches where patients spent hours resting outdoors, treatment rooms, patient wards, staff quarters, and hallways that stretched into what felt like darkness. Today, those hallways are part of the legend. But originally, they were part of the treatment. Fresh air mattered. Sunlight mattered. Spacing patients apart mattered. The architecture was not random. It was built around the best medical thinking of the time. That is what makes Waverly Hills unsettling. The building looks terrifying now, but every strange detail once had a purpose. The open porches were not for atmosphere. They were for air. The long corridors were not designed for fear. They were designed for movement and separation. The isolated hill was not chosen for a ghost story. It was chosen because sick people needed distance from the city. For decades, patients lived inside this place. Some recovered. Some stayed for months. Some stayed longer. And some never left alive. That part of the history is real. And it is heavy enough without exaggeration. One of the most discussed parts of the Waverly story is the tunnel. It ran beneath the hill. It connected the main building with service areas below. It helped move supplies and equipment. And over time, it became known by a much darker name, the Death Tunnel. Some accounts say bodies were moved through the tunnel so patients would not see them leaving the building. Others describe it simply as a utility passage. That difference matters, because this is where history and legend begin to blur. There was a real tunnel. There were real deaths. There were real patients. But the specific details people repeat are not always easy to verify. And that is what makes the file difficult. The building does not need false stories. Its actual history is already intense. When antibiotics became more effective, tuberculosis hospitals across the country changed. Waverly Hills closed as a tuberculosis sanatorium in 1961. The building did not disappear. It reopened in the 1960s as a geriatric care facility. That chapter brought its own stories. Overcrowding, accounts of neglect, a building that had already begun to feel trapped between identities. Eventually, that facility closed too, and Waverly Hills was left with something even more powerful than activity: abandonment. Empty hospitals feel different from empty houses. A house remembers families. A school remembers voices. A hospital remembers fear, treatment, waiting, and loss. That feeling is why Waverly Hills became one of America's most well-known locations. People reported footsteps, shadows, voices in empty hallways, doors, movement where no one stood. The building carries 4 distinct layers. The first is medical history: tuberculosis, isolation, treatment, patients and staff. The second is architecture: the long corridors, the open wards, the windows, the hill, the tunnel, The third is legend, the stories people tell after dark, the rooms people avoid, the names people repeat. The fourth is the hardest, memory. Because places like Waverly Hills do not become famous only because people say they are haunted. They become famous because people feel that something happened there. And in this case, something did. Not one event, not one night. Decades of illness, decades of care, decades of fear, decades of loss. That is why Waverly Hills is different from a simple ghost story. The dark hallway is no longer just a hallway. It is where nurses walked, where patients waited, where footsteps once had a reason. The empty room was a place where someone hoped to get better. The tunnel is not just a legend. It is a reminder that hospitals have hidden systems. Some practical, some painful, some misunderstood. Today, Waverly Hills is visited by people looking for history, architecture, and the paranormal. Some leave convinced, some leave skeptical. Some leave with only the feeling that the building was heavier than they expected. That may be the most honest version of the mystery. Not proof, not dismissal. Just a place where the documented past is strong enough to make every shadow feel loaded. Unexplained does not mean proven. It means unfinished. And this file is still open.